Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again I returned to YouTube far later than I wanted to, though this time the force that was constraining me was having to work for 60 hours a week, something which no longer burdens me, and thus I have all the free time in the world to make videos. Now this is something which a lot of people have requested me to do over the last few months, and I've decided to of course bend my no drama rule for once and provide you with an analysis of some recent controversy in the YouTube community, particularly my part of the YouTube community, particularly the Sarkeesian effect documentary and the drama surrounding its production. Now, like any bit of YouTube drama, there are always quite a bit of theatrics, kabuki theatre and flack going up in the air. In fact, it's taken me quite a long time to tie events together into a recognizable form that makes sense even to myself, let alone all of you guys. So when it comes down to it though, the Sarkeesian effect drama is a lot more simple than it looks. Two people with limited filmmaking experience basically set out to create a documentary as a response to feminist gaming critic Anita Sarkeesian. In order to create this documentary, the two filmmakers, Jordan Owen and Davis Arini, raised funds via Patreon to the tune of $54,000. Initially, the film was received quite hostilely by the press early on, who had suddenly grown psychic powers as they were attacking and dismantling something which didn't even technically exist yet. Anyway, everything was going as expected, with a litany of guests set to appear in the film over the months of filming, such as MRA leader Paul Elam and former attorney and all-purpose blowhard Jack Thompson. Now before we move forward, it's important to know that by February 2015, the film was already largely shot and was already into post-production, as is attested by Arini's blog and by the man himself in the Skype Logs, which I'm going to get to in a second. Anyway, trouble didn't really come a-knocking until the beginning of March 2015, when one of the two, I'll say partners in this case, producer Jordan Owen, decided to fire director Davis Arini after some nasty drama that occurred between the two of them via Skype. Arini threatened to go public and release these private Skype logs unless he was paid the better part of $4,000, which he later revised down to $2,500 in order to complete his own version of the film. And his deal was basically that Owen goes and makes his version, Arini makes his version, and the film partnership splits with no hard feelings. Now these Skype logs, in addition to showing that post-production was underway, also show something else interesting, that $3,000 was taken out of the production budget to buy a car without Jordan's knowledge or permission, in his opinion anyway, for Davis Arini. Anyway, Jordan Owen didn't really go for Davis Arini's little deal and just made a video basically giving them the boot. And once Davis released the Skype logs, he got a cease and desist, at least according to Jordan Owen, crafted by the man who would later become the mediator between the creative team here, film director and pro-porn activist Michael Whiteacre. At this point, there was a serious backer doubt going on as to if the project would even ever get completed, with neither party looking to kiss and make up. So once again, enter Whiteacre. He negotiated a truce, and before long, Owen Arini Productions was back in business under a new form of agreement. Now, whether or not this agreement was a binding contract or not is something that I'll get to in a little bit, but the main point here is that the agreement took the form of an email ostensibly written by Michael Whiteacre. It lays out roughly the following provisions. Number 1, Davis controls the editing. Number 2, Davis will furnish requests for progress updates from Jordan and Michael Whiteacre, I assume. Number 3, Michael Whiteacre is the mediator who casts the vote in the event of a disagreement. Number 4, neither party goes public with damaging information. Number 5, Jordan controls the finances. Number 6, Jordan will not spend any of the money without the knowledge of the other parties. Number 7, Jordan will disclose financial details on request. And number 8, their current animator would be the only animator on the project. Now this email and its provisions are actually going to be very important in a second here, but first I guess I should talk about this being a supposed legal contract. Now, contracts don't have to take the form of a magical piece of paper. Davis Arini is perfectly correct on this. A contract can be verbal, a contract can be done in numerous different ways, and this email could be interpreted as a contract under law. It just depends on the way American contract law is, because I'm unfamiliar familiar with it. However, as noted by Jordan in one of his videos, the email starts with, "We will draft a memorandum." In other words, this isn't even an official court document or an official legal document of any sort. The actual memorandum they were going to draft has also not been forthcoming, which leads me to assume that for all intents and purposes, it just simply doesn't exist. Of course, another flaw was noted by this blogger called the Woolly Bumblebee, and that's that the letter seems to misspecify the parties in the contract. It should actually say disagreements between the two of you and not disagreements between the two of us, which leads to all sorts of speculation. Was this letter simply written by Davis in a sort of plot against Jordan Owen? Who knows? It could be a simple typing mistake, or it could be anything else. I'm not going to speculate on that. However, I would say that this would probably be an issue that would come up in court if this was going to get passed off as an actual agreement in a court of law. Anyway, for the next few months past the spat and the making up, things seem to be going quite fine until June 18th, 2015. This is the day on which the wheels well and truly began falling off the wagon. You see, it was on this day that Jordan Owen decided to send out an incredibly interesting email in which he laid out the financial position that the project found itself in after a trip to Washington DC, which resulted in no usable footage and cost the production somewhere in the region of $3,000. Allegedly, according to Jordan Owen, this was Davis Orini's fault, and he said that he's not going to elaborate on this, but he's ready to substantiate this if anybody wants it. In this email from Jordan, he also lays out some interesting questions about Orini's editing progress. You see, Orini was supposed to get the trailer done by mid-April to show a production company, according to Jordan at least, and he failed to meet this deadline by almost a month and a half, resulting in the trailer releasing at the end of May. At this point, essentially, Jordan demanded to see what progress Davis had made on editing the film together. He wanted to see a render of everything, he wanted to see daily progress updates from Davis, and he just basically wanted to see what Davis had done on the film. He also demanded something to show the Gamergate in Atlanta meetup scheduled for the end of July, in fact the 31st. He also wanted the finished film done in August, which was 2.5 months away at this point. Now, it's important to note here that at this date, the film had been in post-production for almost 4 whole months. Surely in that time some substantial progress had been made. I mean, 4 months is a pretty common time frame for an entire feature-length Hollywood film to be edited in its entirety. So giving Jordan some progress updates wouldn't actually be that difficult, right? How much would you expect him to have? I mean, even if he's editing at half the speed of someone in Hollywood, he would have about half the film completed. And seeing as the film had a 1 hour 40 running time, that would mean that he would have somewhere in the region of 50 minutes completed. Well, over the next few days, an entirely different conversation all of a sudden took place. The progress updates were largely swept under the rug, and essentially, Orini walked away from the project for a couple of days, leaving Jordan with an ultimatum. Either Jordan gives Orini the files that Orini demanded, or he would essentially continue on the project without Jordan's input. Problem is though, following his request for the files makes no sense when you sit down and read it. Jordan basically had an email where Davis requested that Jordan send him part of the movie, so Jordan sent him a rendered copy of the intro that Davis wanted for the film, which was essentially made out of a YouTube clip easily found online on Anita Sarkeesian's channel, and some audio and music to go along with that clip, and Jordan included all of that in the files that he sent Davis. Anyway, Davis demands that Jordan sends him the raw files, and the only raw file there is the YouTube video, because of course Davis's reasoning is that the quality of the intro was just dropping each time it's re-rendered, and so he can't use Jordan's pre-rendered intro. He has to get the YouTube clip and then completely recut it from the ground up. What Davis then did, which actually makes things rather more complicated and weird, was to demand the YouTube clip that Jordan used to create his intro, and then to demand at the end of his email exchange the clip that Jordan sent him at the beginning of his email exchange, so that Davis would know how to cut it together. Jordan had just sent him that file. And basically, if you didn't get that file that he already had, and or the unobtainable YouTube video that was secretly hidden in Fort Knox, otherwise known as the Sarkeesian's channel, he was essentially going to walk away and essentially continue making the film without any of Jordan's input. Which basically means, once again, he's dissolving the partnership because there's no way that Jordan would let it go down like that. The other important thing about this email exchange from June is that Davis Arini mentions specifically rendering 25 minutes of footage and uploading it. And this is during the same exchange where he essentially walks away from the project for 2 days and basically blames Jordan for production difficulties and says that unless Jordan can give him these files, he's essentially going to cut Jordan out. Anyway, this is the interesting part right here, because we get to July the 4th, around 12 days or so from his ultimatum. Davis Arini apparently, though, had no further contact with Jordan, though it's difficult to verify what occurred in this window. But essentially, in this 12-day window, Davis must have made a decision because he did two things on the 4th. Firstly, he launched a campaign on GoFundMe for $15,000, allegedly to complete the post-production phase of the film, and he also launched this via a video heavily implying that this money was going to go to him and Jordan, and that his fundraising had the seal of approval of Owen, which it did not. In fact, this fundraising, this going for more money, was actually a big disagreement between Davis Arini and Owen in the weeks leading up to these events. And the second thing he did, and I can only assume that he did this in support of his little fundraising effort, is that he sent exactly 25 minutes of footage to both Mundane Matt and Sargon of Akkad, who both made videos talking about the footage and sending their subscribers his way, resulting in him receiving $1,900 for post-production on the film. And yes, that money went straight to him. It didn't go to Jordan like the Patreon money. This fund was specifically designed to send the money to Davis Arini. And it's at this point that the agreement between Owen and Arini is completely null and void. Why? Because first of all, Davis failed to furnish updates on request. When Jordan Owen requested these updates on the 18th, Davis Arini didn't do them, and instead he gave 25 minutes that he had rendered straight to two of the largest YouTubers he could possibly find to spread awareness about his fundraising campaign. So he'd breached the contract by simply not providing updates right there. But the other aspect is, of course, by doing that, he of course went public by default, unless Sargon of Akkad and Matt don't count as members of the public, uninvolved with the production all of a sudden for some reason. He essentially published information to the public, which I mean, Monday Matt and Sargon could have just dropped that on their channels if they wanted to. So basically, he released information to the public before Owen even did. And not only that, but there's another aspect that just occurs to me. Jordan Owen in the original contract is specified to be the person who's in control of the finances. So by creating a project under which Davis is in control of the finances, he's voided the contract right there and then. Also, at this point I must note another anomaly which I've noticed. Davis likes to talk at length about how arduous the process of editing this movie was. He's talked at length about how he's a great Hollywood editor, all the keyboard shortcuts, etc, to the point where it's become a meme. But here's the thing, it took him 4 months to produce just 25 minutes. Okay, 4 months to produce 25 minutes of a film, which isn't even a quarter of the way there. Okay, I can buy that if it's this difficult to edit. But the final version he released about 10 days after he released his 25 minutes to Sargon and Matt, however, total 40 minutes in length. So how was he able to add another 15 minutes onto his version of the movie in a few days, if editing this takes so long, if it's such a Herculean effort? And while I'm pointing out inconvenient questions, how come Davis Arini was perfectly satisfied with his $4,000 to make his own film back in the Skype Logs, but now that even including the progress he's made thus far, he all of a sudden needs $15,000 all of a sudden to finish the movie, $5,000 of which was for a private investigator who Jordan Owen allegedly sent the information a month before this happened, though there is some dispute about that. The main points here though still stand. A. Davis Arini didn't provide Jordan with the updates that Jordan requested on the 18th of June, which completely and utterly voids the contract, and B. Davis Arini tried to raise money for post-production under the pretense that him and Jordan needed the money, when in fact Jordan never approved of the fundraiser and all of the proceeds went straight to Davis. And of course point A invalidates the contract in point B, so Davis is left completely and utterly without an excuse. Now, I could fill the rest of this video, of course, with Davis Arini defending himself, because right now this video has been more one-sided than an amputee's dance routine, and I publicly acknowledge that. The problem is Davis has never actually responded to Jordan Owen's biggest points. Davis Arini instead decided to strawman his arguments down into 5 separate points, say that one of his points cancelled out the other somehow, and basically made a mockery of the entire thing, but he never responded to the allegation that he didn't provide Jordan with updates on the 18th of June. I wonder why that is. I mean, after all, why would Arini close the fundraiser after only a couple of days and then remove his original begging video if there's nothing to be bothered by? So any way that you look at this, the true story behind the collapse of the Sarkeesian effect is this. The film ran out of money. Jordan Owen demanded to see how far editing has gone because he had seen no progress up until that point, and Davis had had about 4 months to pull the project together and pull something out of his ass. Instead of giving Jordan the update that Jordan demanded, Davis went and raised money in Jordan's name, ostensibly to finish editing the film that Jordan Owen hadn't seen. At this point, the partnership was essentially going to be fucked, and both people were going to go their separate ways, because there is no way in holy hell you can raise money in someone else's name and expect them to be okay with that, and expect them to want to continue working with you. That is ridiculous, and I'm sorry, that is highly unprofessional, and something that would not be tolerated in just about every single corporate culture, every single business environment in the world outside of Nigeria. But really, it's that simple. It's worth noting, of course, that thus far, from the money he received, that $1,900, Arini hasn't produced anything, and it's actually fast approaching the 9-month mark that he's had to edit something useful out of the footage that he's had, which is basically only significant because that is the exact same length of time between Anita Sarkeesian's Kickstarter and her first Tropes vs. Women's video. Now, all these months later, we have the Sarkeesian effect, which is both far longer than the originally planned movie, and is also edited together in a couple of months by Owen, and yet is remarkably better in every way than what Arini produced in 6 months or so of working like a dog. Of course, that brings us to the Sarkeesian effect film that Owen released itself. This has been something that a lot of people have anticipated, and I'm very sorry to disappoint you. You see, I don't hate the movie. My overall impressions of the film were a resounding meh. Put it this way, it might work well as a primer for people who are unfamiliar with the likes of Steph Guthrie and a more odious behaviour and cases like that, but to someone like me who's been around the block for a long time, there's nothing new in it. I've seen everything in that film before. Now, from a technical standpoint, the film's cinematography and quality can be quite poor, owing to upscaling issues caused by having to crop around some dodgy camera work, which once again rests squarely on the shoulders of one Davis Arini. The sound quality also experienced some notable drops. Kathy Young, for example, had a particularly tough time on this one, sounding like she was broadcasting from within a wind tunnel. All in all, the film left me feeling that there's a hell of a lot of untapped potential left in it. However, let me put it this way, it could also have been a hell of a lot worse. Is there a good argument that Jordan Owen was asleep at the wheel for a portion of this production? Absolutely. Like 6 months or so with hardly any notable editing progress is something that no production can afford. And if he had a more competent partner, it's easy to argue that things certainly would have turned out much better. However though, in the end, the Sarkeesian effect backers got exactly what they paid for. A documentary about Anita Sarkeesian and her pals that covers all of the bases. The thing that people seem to forget, of course, is that crowdfunding is at the end of the day gambling. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, at the very least, for everyone who backed it, it's lucky to have someone who gave enough of a shit about the project to finish it and release it with close to no money left in a very short period period of time. That at least has to be worth something. I've been Dangerous Analysis. Follow me on Twitter if you so dare. Thanks a bunch to all my subscribers, and as always,
good night and good luck.